America's supplies of gasoline and diesel are at critical levels, and things are going to get much worse than we're being told. What we're about to share with you today is a developing situation, and we will continue to keep track of the facts as this crisis evolves and the factors at play become clearer. Recent numbers show that a serious fuel crisis is coming this winter, and that will have a tremendous impact on our wallets and our economy. As you'll see over the next few minutes, we're being warned that gasoline prices are going to come back to historical highs, and oil executives are saying that there will be diesel shortages as demand for fuels soar amid the cold weather. But our capacity to produce them remains limited. We understand that most Americans don't spend much time thinking about diesel, but the truth is that without it, our supply chains can't function and our economy stops. All of this can make things a lot more difficult than they already are right now. So stay tuned with us, and don't forget to leave a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel to keep informed about this worrying fuel crunch. The national average pump price for a gallon of gas maintained its recent surge and continued hovering around $3.70 this week, a much lower average than in June when prices surpassed the $5 mark, but still considerably higher than the $2.17 we used to pay just a couple of years back. However, the AAA is warning that tight supplies and increased demand are combining to result in another spike in gasoline prices, and some regions of the country are already feeling the pain. On the West Coast, drivers are paying $6 a gallon on average. Nationwide, gas demand increased by 500,000 barrels per day last week, while total domestic gasoline stocks decreased by 2.4 million barrels. If demand remains robust as supply tightens, drivers should brace for rising pump prices through the winter, the AAA wrote. Meanwhile, on the East Coast, many gas stations have already been completely depleted. Numerous terminals are out of gasoline and ethanol due to various supply delays, according to the distributor TAC Energy. On Wednesday, the Energy Information Administration revealed that gasoline stockpiles on the East Coast have dwindled to their lowest seasonal level on a calendar basis since 2007. As authorities start to relocate supplies from other regions to help boost East Coast reserves, gas shortages may become even more widespread in the weeks ahead. At the same time, an acute shortage of diesel is already underway, and it is threatening to keep inflation and hitting bills elevated all across the country through the winter. Since January, domestic supplies of diesel have been steadily getting tighter. At the beginning of this month, the EIA warned that diesel inventories could collapse in a span of 24 days. At that time, authorities were quick to dismiss the agency's warning, saying that reserves had been replenished. But the increase they were talking about didn't make things any better. The latest data shared by the EIA shows that now the United States has just 26 days of diesel supplies left. Supplies have not moved much over the past month, highlighted Denton Chinkagrana, the chief oil analyst at the agency Oil Price Information Service. Over the past month, totals were about 106.1 to 106.8 million barrels, so there was no real change of consequence. The East Coast is the main issue. Supplies are very low there. By comparison, during normal times, average reserve levels stand at 54 days of diesel fuel supply. It doesn't matter by which metric, today the national numbers for distillates are pretty tight, said Patrick DeHaan, head of petroleum analysis at Gas Buddy. It's uncomfortable to admit, but if we get a bout of cold weather, things could be challenging, he stressed. Diesel is the main fuel used for transporting goods as well as powering construction, farming, and military vehicles and equipment. Last year, the United States transportation sector alone consumed 46.82 billion gallons, or 1.11 billion barrels of diesel, at an average of about 128 million gallons a day. Our stockpiles have been depleted to less than a third of their usual levels for this time of year, which is concerning, since many states rely on the fuel for heating in the winter. If diesel inventory continues to run down at such a brisk pace, the impact on transportation costs for goods could drive inflation up even further. Right now, the national average price of diesel is at around $5.30 a gallon, $1.65 more than last year, and the outlook for short-term prices is quite distressing. A new article by Newsweek is telling us that the United States could soon experience a severe shortage of diesel exhaust fluid, impacting U.S. drivers already hit with soaring fuel prices. Diesel exhaust fluid is a solution made up of urea and deionized water that's needed for almost everything that runs on diesel. It reduces harmful gases being released into the atmosphere and works by converting nitrogen oxide, produced by diesel engines, into nitrogen and steam, the report explained. According to the founder of the Oil Price Information Service, Tom Klotzer, if the country runs out of fuel this winter, the consequences could be disastrous. It would freeze global commerce, said Klotzer. Whatever you have, whether it's a car or a widget, everything that moves around the world moves by virtue of diesel molecules. The ships that sail from Europe to here, from China to the west coast of the United States, they use something close to diesel fuel to power those ships, and once it gets here, it moves either by rail or by truck, and most of those vehicles are powered by diesel. So it would be a hell of a problem. I don't think we have wind-masted scooters or electric trucks at the ready yet, so it'd be kind of a vacancy in the energy transition where we might not be transitioning to anything, because commerce would just grind to a halt. Bloomberg reported that immense supply chain headaches are already emerging because of this. A shortage of diesel fuel is spreading across the United States, with one company launching an emergency delivery protocol requesting a 72-hour advance notice from clients to be able to make the delivery, it wrote. Fuel supplier Mansfield Energy wrote in a note to its clients that conditions are rapidly developing, and, at times, carriers are having to visit multiple terminals to find supply, which delays deliveries and strains local trucking capacity. Klotzer noted that many more disruptions like that are likely to occur, saying, I think that every fuel has been essentially in crisis this year at one time or another, he added, saying that this crisis has been manageable in the summer, but now the biggest risk comes in the crunch time for the cold northern hemisphere temperatures. I would say from Christmas through Valentine's Day, Klotzer said. We're going to have logistical issues, and it's going to be very high-priced. I wouldn't be surprised if we see diesel prices remain somewhere between $6 and $6.50 a gallon in the U.S., Klotzer continued. Gas Buddy's Patrick DeHaan highlights that the price of diesel in the U.S. will continue to move upward due to our limited ability to improve supply. With imports from Russia banned following the aggression on Ukraine, and with refineries conducting seasonal maintenance, we're left with very few sustainable options for long-term relief. One of the biggest reasons for this fuel supply crunch is a serious lack of refining capacity. In fact, EIA data also shows that half of U.S. refineries have closed since 1980. Today, there are significantly fewer refineries which process crude oil into diesel and other products in the United States than were just a few years ago. There are just 124 now operating, down from twice as many in 1980 and down from 139 in 2016, the association exposed. The Northeast region is particularly sparse, with just 7 refineries today, down from 27 in 1982. A couple of weeks ago, after being confronted with a flood of questions about what would be done to solve this worsening situation, the federal government said that it had some tools to bolster diesel supply, such as the Northeast Home Heating Oil Reserve, which houses 1 million barrels of diesel in case of a disruption in supplies. We have looked very carefully at being prepared to deploy as and when necessary, National Economic Council Director Brian Deese said. However, not long after that, the Washington Post revealed that diesel demand is so high that if 1 million barrels of diesel were delivered from the Northeast reserves, they would be depleted in less than 6 hours. That's an extremely worrying prospect. This means that if we needed to tap into those reserves, they wouldn't actually make the situation any better. This is supposed to be our Plan B, and all signs are indicating that we're going to need one. And the fact that these reserves are unreliable suggests that we're effectively headed to the worst-case scenario. Winter is right at the corner, and demand for fuels will continue to jump. But with 1 million barrels less refining capacity than we had back in 2019, we're basically doing more with less, Dahan stressed. The fuel crunch goes far beyond just diesel, but affects many other oil products, such as heating oil and natural gas. This is the start of heating oil season. This is when demand really starts picking up as we enter the winter months, added Debnil Chowdhury, the head of North and Latin American refining and marketing research at S&P Global Commodity Insights. The rising costs of diesel fuel, therefore, impact everybody, as diesel prices affect direct manufacturing, transportation, and heating costs. As diesel prices rise, so do the costs of goods, which in general are passed on to consumers, said Suzanne Danforth, an analyst with Wood Mackenzie. We wish we could tell you that there is hope that a major crisis can be averted, but even the Bank of America is alerting that oil inventories have reached a dangerously low point. And until that changes, prices are likely to continue to rise. We're in a market that, for the second straight year, is undersupplied, drawing down inventories as a result, on top of the drawdown in strategic reserves approved by political leaders to try and lower prices, researchers wrote. Oil inventories have fallen to a dangerously low point, with certain gasoline and diesel supplies in particular at precarious levels as we head into peak season. United States oil inventories are already 14% below their 5-year average, Bank of America notes. When even the CEO of Exxon is warning about turbulent times ahead, we should definitely start listening. In an interview with CNBC, Darren Wood said, consumers must be prepared to endure up to 5 years of turbulent oil markets, citing underinvestment and an abrupt transition to renewable energy that will cause society to pay a high price. In other words, the incredibly bad decisions that our leaders have made throughout the past few decades are now catching up with us in a major way, and we're at serious risk of seeing our supply chains and our economy grinding to a halt. The nation's truckers are already coping with an immense amount of pressure as prices continue to surge, and many of them who already are being financially eviscerated by this situation may quit the industry altogether, and only then we will understand how essential their work is for our entire country. The warnings are there, and they're coming from official agencies and high-profile oil executives, but only God knows why our government keeps ignoring what they're saying. We're already witnessing with our own eyes the effects of all this whenever we go to the gas station to fill in our car tanks. Everything is definitely about to change, but not in a good way. This is gonna be disastrous, and all of us will suffer from the consequences of this supply crunch. We're gonna keep on watching the unfolding of this situation very carefully over the coming weeks, because the stage is set for a major fuel crisis. If you're seeing any odd developments of this issue in your region, feel free to share with us in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to turn on the bell to always be notified when a new video comes up.